Hi again, everyone. I'm Ollie Matthews. This is the Narcissistic Resistance, and this resistance video is sponsored by contribution from Alice, and here's her story. Hi, Ollie. I've been watching your videos for about 2.5 years now. You were among the first handful of YouTubers and sources I came across on malignant narcissism. The mind-blowing information was validating and empowering, and I found my tribe. Thank you for tirelessly getting the info out and exposing these vampires. I may not be up to date on the situation with your daughter, but I hope and pray justice and truth prevail and triumph. Here's my story, whereby I'm focusing on how it all ended. My parents and I were political refugees fleeing the Soviet invasion of our country, starting a new life in Western Europe. Although we had no contacts in our home, we didn't speak the language. My young and educated parents found goodwill and good luck. Things fell into place quickly, and we could have easily turned into an immigration success story. But our home became more dysfunctional with every year. My father often ran off and was pretty much hands off with raising my little brother and I. He was an abusive person, and I later broke off contact with him. My parents divorced after 25 tumultuous years of marriage. Unlike my father, my mother never left us. Like Joan Crawford in Mommy Dearest, she worked hard, had many talents and skills, could be a tough survivalist, and sometimes provided a nice gift or surprise. But there was a hair trigger to verbal and sometimes physical abuse. She was a neglecting, empathyless, competing, and sabotaging mother. I grew up with zero social or life skills and was criminally naive into my 30s. I was the scapegoat, and my younger brother was the golden child. Although my brother was not beaten and slapped like I was, he enjoyed privileges denied to me. Life with my mother was less and less golden as he reached his teenage years and beyond. By that time, he left home at 17 and moved to the U.S. in my early 20s. Oh, I had left home and moved to the U.S. in my early 20s. Pages could be filled with the crappy stuff going on at our house, but to paint a quick picture, here are some of the gems my mother told me as a child. We messed up with you. Your brother is now the real child. If you were a real daughter, our father would not have left us, because a real daughter keeps the marriage together. And I'm surprised the boy called you for a date. You're nothing special. It's not astonishing that I had a poor relationship with my mother throughout my life. A few times I vowed I would never talk to her again, but my resolve did not last. Like most daughters, I desired a relationship with my mother and blamed myself for not trying hard enough and for not being mature enough. But then in my early 40s, the miracle, the golden years, suddenly my mother and I got along fantastically. We called each other every Saturday and chatted and giggled for 1, 2, even 3 hours. This went on for an unprecedented whole year. I felt the urge to celebrate this new beautiful era with a thoughtful gift from my mother. She had complained about always getting the big gifts in the big boxes like irons and bread machines, but just once she would like to receive a personal gift that comes in a small velvet box. So with great care, to the point of getting a cold sore in an artsy gift store, I picked out a silver bracelet with an amber stones in different colors like jade green and dark gray, which I had never seen, as well as in the typical honey tone. I thought it was a modern, non-fussy piece which would fit my mother's style, lifestyle, and hands. My mother and I had gotten out of the habit of sending gifts to each other a decade earlier, so a Christmas parcel would be a perfect surprise. I added a small gift for my brother and my stepfather, whom my mother married several years after divorcing my father. I didn't want him to feel left out, but my mother would be queen of Christmas Day. Long before the parcel's expected arrival date, my mother called early in the morning on a work day, not our customary Saturday. Seeing her number on the caller ID, I picked up the phone feeling giddy with excitement about the upcoming surprise. To my shock, without any greeting or intro, she unleashed an angry tirade. While listening in stunned disbelief, I saw our precious relationship being violently trampled into the ground. I heard statements I could not process, like, "For years I've been trying to throw out all the junk in this house, and here comes more, and I never want a gift from you again." The parcel had apparently arrived. She also said that she had to pay import duty around $20, if I remember correctly, and I wonder to this day if the Postal Service made a mistake. I really didn't think of the value of my parcel exceeded any limits or tariffs. It's $20. As the tirade went on, my shell shock turned to anger when she was done yelling at me. I was done with her too, for good. I coldly wrapped up the conversation and slammed the phone. The golden year had been a lie. We had not finally found each other. We had not grown up and come into our own. There was no genuine mother-daughter relationship. There was no intimate friendship between two adult women. As the dream dissipated like fog, I remember my husband's stern and repeated warning about sending my mother a gift. Don't do it. It will not go as you think, and in the end, you will cry. Despite not speaking her language and only meeting her a handful of times, he knew her better after 10 years than I did after 40. I had dismissed him for being alarmist, harsh, and hardcore, but on that day, I sobered up and matured by a good 10 years. Sometimes your spouse can just see things that you can't. I mean, like, just to give you an example, as Charlene is posting her artwork on Instagram and Facebook, all these people in her life that she's known for years that she thought were her friends as she's becoming productive are just unfollowing her and stop being her friends. And these are the same, and these people are all the same people I had warned her about. I'm like, these people will turn on you one day. They're not your friends. They're not who you think they are. And she's like, no, you don't know. And she's like, can you believe so? I'm like, I told you that was gonna. She's like, yeah. It's jealousy. It's straight out jealousy. And just sometimes your spouse can see things that we can't. Look, she saw things in Erin that I couldn't see. She saw things in my father. She told me, don't trust your father. She knew it. She knew it. Don't trust him. Don't trust him. Don't trust him. And she was right on that one. After that devastating incident, my mother kept calling on Saturdays. I didn't pick up the phone or call her back. Surely she would get the hint after the 3rd or 13th attempt that I was not interested in talking to her again. But surprisingly, she kept calling and calling. After 3 months, I was worn down and picked up the phone thinking she was dying to apologize, because why else would someone humiliate themselves calling not stop for 3 months? Narcissists will. And if she wasn't over in Europe, she would have been at your house. But instead of setting things straight, she just chatted away. Maybe she was just working up her nerve to circle back to the bracelet incident. Well, it never came up, and when we finally hung up, I felt tricked back into the relationship. That's what they do. They act like nothing's wrong. And if you bring it up, what are you bringing that up for? My grace and politeness waiting for the apology had become my accidental signature on an unwritten contract. So the regular phone calls resumed. However, our chummy Saturday chats were no more. I was courteously cold on the phone, if I even got a word in edgewise. My mother started to hold monologues, jumping from subject to subject. Most of the time, she wouldn't even start the call with a greeting or chit-chat. I would just pick up the phone and the robocall started. She'd ask me a question. She would either dismiss me with a shallow platitude like, just don't think about it anymore, or interrupt me after the 3rd word and resume the robocall. A month after getting sucked in again, she delivers a follow-up blow by asking in a sweet, innocent tone if the amber stones in the bracelet were plastic with glitter. Obviously, the gift had not been cheapened enough yet. Instead of vehemently defending the bracelet's worth, I surprised myself by purposely diffusing her by answering, yeah, probably, just throw it away. The nicest, most expensive gift I have ever bought any person in my life, a token of love, a daughter's blessing for her mother, reduced to a ring from a gumball machine, too absurd to waste further breath or energy. 2 years later, my mother and stepfather announced a 2-week visit. I would have never invited her, but did not have the nerve to forbid her to come. What was sold by her as don't make a big fuss about planning anything, we're mainly coming to see our kids, proved a tour de force full of her fits and demands. Out of hospitality and wanting to make their overseas trip worthwhile, I did make a big fuss about planning outings and day trips. But I only remember rejection of those plans and conflict upon conflict. I had a weird feeling that she got warm fuzzies from our fights, despite her tears. She was. I was still many years away from learning the concept of narcissistic supply. During one of our fights about nothing ever being good enough for her, I brought up the bracelet incident, and she remembered no such thing. She even summoned my stepfather as a witness. He confirmed overhearing the phone call and got scolded for not having stopped her. Again, absurd. That trip was their last visit with us. 2 years ago, tragedy hit. My stepfather in his 70s was diagnosed with cancer in the advanced stages. He decided against any medical intervention to fight the disease because he probably wanted to get away from your mother. Death was welcoming. When my mother called me to tell me, she sounded like a woman about to go berserk. She already been to the hospital twice in 1 week with nervous breakdowns. Then she got so sick that they had to cancel my stepfather's upcoming birthday cruise. This was serious. I put my past grievances on hold and decided to rush to their side. My employer gave me carte blanche to come and go as I needed, and 21st century technology made it possible for me to work online from another continent. This was a tremendous blessing amid the tragedy. My husband, although skeptical, respected my conviction to drop everything and get on a plane to Europe. I spent 2 weeks with my parents. Initially, my mother looked a lot worse than my stepfather, but with every day, more color and strength returned to her. My goal was to be emotional support, a loving presence, and a helper with everything around the house and a huge garden. I made it a point to do all tasks with love and gusto, always asking for more to do, thinking every little bit would help. My mother pulled a few cold and tactless stunts, even towards my stepfather. The best was the last day. During the 2 weeks I had seen my stepfather go downhill. By the time I was leaving, he could no longer walk well or climb stairs. He was mostly kept to the bedroom, the little sitting room across the bedroom, and the adjoining bathroom, all on the second floor of the house. Observing his rapid decline with short-lived plateaus and even shorter-lived improvements. I didn't buy my main train ticket back to the airport until the last possible moment, in case it became necessary for me to stay. When I finally bought my ticket online the day before my trip back to the US, my mother noticed it cost 20 euros more than if I had bought it days earlier. Outraged, she stomped up and down, echoing the marble floor hallway, screaming about this waste of money. The irony with the marble floor is not lost on me in writing this. I desperately tried to pull her aside to gently explain my rationale without scaring her or my stepfather, who was feet away but she wasn't having it. By the way, my mother has a track record of flipping out over wasting money, even and especially with small sums, as much as 20 euros. Later, my mother would do the same thing over like $1.80 on a phone bill. You'd have a 3-day argument. Later in the evening, the three of us were watching TV in the little sitting room, with my stepfather resting on a daybed and listening to the program with his eyes closed. This had been a pleasant routine for us every evening. We would all retire within the hour. The next morning I would leave. My stepfather got up to go to the bathroom. As soon as the bathroom door shut behind him, my mother said to me, "I didn't really need you. You came in vain. I would have needed you later, but not now. With your 100 pounds body weight, you can't help me anyway." My brain was replaying these words, thinking I had misheard. What an odd thing to say to a daughter the evening before her departure amidst a serious family crisis. And by the way, I weighed a lot more than 100 pounds. I did not know how to react. Sorry for what? For miscalculating of the stages of my stepfather's cancer? For incorrectly anticipating the timing of my mother's needs? I was convinced that I had given my very best and my very most while working full time in between, but my very best was not even close to good or acceptable. But it didn't stop there. More weird comments followed. I was at a loss for words because I didn't follow the logic, especially the moral logic. So I sat there quietly waiting for the fit to be over. When finally cornered with a yes-no question, I mustered up an appeasing cliche answer. My mother first agreed, paused after a minute, and responded, I hoped we wouldn't be sniping at each other on our last evening. She finally pushed the right button. I spoke up to defend myself. At the same time, I realized she will not quit. This will only end one way, in a drag out. But for heaven's sakes, why? Because she needs it. Because she needs the fight. They need the fight. They need the conflict. And this is something very common I've seen with ex-Soviet bloc mothers, especially Russian mothers. This is very common in ex-communist Soviet bloc Russian mothers. Something else came to me. I'm an adult. I'm not morally or legally obligated to have to sit here. I don't have to endure this. I'm not handcuffed to my chair. I'm within 10 steps of a door. I'm quicker than my mother. I could just get up and leave. In 12 hours, I'm out of here. So I got up. In an effort to save the evening, I apologized to my mother for failing her and overstaying my welcome and excused myself for the evening. On my way out the door, my mother gritted through her teeth. You're so unjust. But I was already at the staircase to rush downstairs to my bedroom, biting my tongue off, nearly colliding with my stepfather who was coming out of the bathroom. How crappy for him. He left our peaceful little harmonious party for a few minutes, and when he came back, the party was over and the atmosphere was toxic for absolutely no reason. Back in my bedroom, I felt creeped out. My moral compass was spinning, unable to find north, and I was mad at myself for getting so worked up, so close to the finish line. The next morning was a minute-by-minute countdown to freedom. I had initially considered coming back in a month and then every other month, but now that was off the table. My husband and I planned on coming together that summer. He was very good with fixing, building, and maintaining anything in the house or garden. He's also talented, battle-hardened medical professional, but that trip was off the table too. What a blessing it would have been for her to have trustworthy, capable, medically savvy, loving helpers around on a regular basis. She will never know that she had won the grand prize, but shredded the winning ticket with her mouth. My stepfather passed away a month later, and I made a dreaded trip back for the funeral. Still reeling from the last visit, I had already decided this would be my very last visit with her, and I only went so I would not regret later that I did not attend my stepfather's funeral. I also wanted to support my brother. He had been traveling back and forth to my mother's house on the other side of the country, leaving his young family behind each time. I was going to end this chapter on a classy note. Within 5 minutes of my arrival, my mother, she commented, "Well, you're all smart. You left and abandoned me." What the heck is she talking about? Since my stepfather was diagnosed with cancer 3 months earlier, there's been a constant stream of relatives, neighbors, doctors, nurses, volunteers from across the street, across the country, and across the world. I was not the only one who stayed for 2 weeks. Many went above and beyond. It's never enough for these people. I stayed 1 week this time, mostly to help prepare for the reception after the funeral. To our guests, we presented ourselves as a loving, intact family. Only one cousin on my stepfather's side knew better. This elderly lady living in the same town offered my mother and I to help clean up the family grave the day before the funeral. She maintains other graves and has the routine down. Carrying the cousin's supply to my stepfather's grave, the three of us quietly passed rows of other people's loved ones already put to rest, some recently, some a long time ago. Our somber march was interrupted by my mother mocking a grave on the other side of the cemetery with a large bust of Jesus wearing a thorn crown. I suppose she was mocking the size of the bust, but who knows? The cousin and I did not react. I thought it was a tactless and inappropriate to make fun of people's expressions of their grief, especially for a widow on her way to her husband's grave the day before his funeral. The madness continued. My mother and I pulled weeds, and the cousin was smoothing out gravel around the grave with her rake. And suddenly my mother tried to rip the rake out of the cousin's hand. The two senior citizens tussled over a rake, which went cartoonishly left, right, left. The cousin pleaded repeatedly, "Please stop," and eventually won the tug of war. To be clear, it was the cousin's rake. It was like watching a bully at the playground ripping a toy from other kids' hands. It's kind of like how communism is, right? You got to understand, you can't be lost to what your mother comes from and what she left, and the system of government and the society she came from. Communists just take shit. This is how they act. They belittle. They make fun of everything. Any type of insecurity a communist has, anybody they're going to mock it and put it down. Subversion from within. You're a narcissist. You're just using communist tactics. Even though they escaped communism, there's something about your mother and a lot of Russian women who actually kind of like the communist tactics. And I've seen this repeatedly on channels, because you'd be surprised how many Russian mother stories are actually on this channel. Sick and tired of my mother, with nothing left to lose and only 2 more days to go until I would never see her again, I expressed my disapproval. My mother exploded into, "If you are useless, at least get out of my way," while rushing me. If I hadn't jumped to the side, she would have probably pummeled me. I felt trashy. I mean, who gets into a physical altercation at a cemetery? Classy people do. The cousin kept a stiff upper lip. Maybe she just wanted to accomplish and survive her mission too. Probably not her first rodeo with my mother. There were more stories that week, but I think these highlights are enough. I left the morning after the funeral and will never be back. Between my first and second trip to my parents' house, I started learning about NPD. I found your and other YouTube channels and could not get enough info fast enough. Amazed at the similar experiences and stories from people all over the world. The mad rush for knowledge has continued ever since. Despite my conclusions and decisions to never see her again, I still felt empathy for my mother as an elderly widow. I wanted to remain her lifeline for the worst case scenario, and I didn't want to unload her on my brother, but I also started feeling disgust. I stopped calling her, and I would write emails for her birthday and holidays so I wouldn't have to talk to her. I would still take her phone calls, even attempted to say something genuinely kind or complimentary to her to offset my repertoire of, yes, okay, cool, really? But that wasn't, that's kind of funny, because I used to do that to because my ex-wife was a robocall. She just blah, 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 talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. And she didn't even care what you were saying. She would just talk through it. And I would do the same thing. And I got it from the old Chris Rock, from a Chris Rock bit. As they're going on, the guy just goes, "Go on. Go ahead. Really? Get out of here. Go ahead. I told you. Really?" And then, "I told you that bitch was crazy," because they're always usually complaining about some other woman. "I told you that bitch is crazy." You always got to throw in, "I told you that bitch is crazy," because they're usually talking about another woman. But It would take her a couple times before she would figure out what I was doing, and then I was an asshole. But it would just go to prove, like, you're just talking at me. You're not listening. You just want to talk at somebody. You don't even listen to what they have to say. But I was not able to stop her monologues, even if I talked over her. Yeah, they don't hear you. Another blessing that could not be delivered to a person starving for it. First half of this year, my mother started pushing for my husband and I to visit her. Of course we won't. Of course I did not reveal or discuss the reasons why, with her knowing you cannot reason with a narcissist and that it would only result in drama. So I played dumb, diverted, distracted, and made excuses. It stopped working after a while, and she intensified the guilt trips, covert accusations, and coercion efforts. It did not matter to her that I obviously did not want to come. She probably wanted photo ops and evidence of our happy family for relatives, neighbors, and herself. I can't think of any other reason why she would want me there. Why? Because she probably wants to try to drive a divide between you and your husband so you can come take care of her and she can berate you for the rest of your life. Russian mothers don't want to die alone. They don't want to die alone. Then came last June. That whole month I had the gut feeling that my resolve not to abandon my mother was being tested to the breaking point. On 6/23 came another accusation email. The old, you are a bad daughter and a bad Christian. The bad daughter routine, yeah, I had been dragged into that courtroom all my life. The bad Christian was an on and off shtick. I became a Christian in my mid-20s. I am not sure where my mother stands with God, but she has clubbed me over the head with honor your father and mother a time or two. She has mocked my charity work as getting gold stars from God. So she mocks your religion, just like a communist. On one end, she'll mock your religion. On the other end, she'll use it against you. She'll then try to use the tenets of it against you. She's using old Cold War tactics on you. That's what she's using, old Cold War communist tactics. She even has accused me of sinning against God for saving lives of people whom he destined for death, and thus contributing to the overpopulation of the planet. Eugenics. Eugenics. Socialism, communism, eugenics, it's all the same shit. This is who she is. She's still an old commie bitch. Doesn't matter that her family has said that you guys escaped. There's something about that ideology and how it works she identifies with and liked. It's sociopathic logic, weird math with zero humanity. When I finished reading that email on 6/23, it occurred to me that no amount of self-control, patience, grace, or turning the other cheek was going to work out long term. It was designed to fail. I also recognized that my commitment to hold on to her death was having an enabling effect, validating her insults and accusations. Truth be told, I was done with her. Nothing left to try or do, no point in sacrificing or poisoning myself further. So once again, I got up, walked out of her courtroom and out of her life. The court trial will have to go on without my presence. Any miracle in her life I'm praying for will also have to occur without my presence. Good luck and farewell. I read her last email to me only once, translating it crudely to my husband as I was reading it. Then, without fanfare, I blocked her on email, social media, and hid the email in a folder I can't see. The phone is too unsophisticated to block numbers, but I'm willing to get a new phone or phone number if necessary. Yeah, do it. I'm putting this off to postpone any drama and triangulation involving my brother having or not having my new number. Although he has put his foot down with her, I think he maintains low contact because his little kids do not understand if grandma is suddenly gone. But that's his story and his problem. I just don't need to add to that. Although a feeling of detoxing, sobering up, and regaining identity is starting to settle in, I'm also heartbroken over the trampled blessings, wasted chances, and needless, pointless, self-destructive willfulness of it all. So many gifts unwrapped forever. Now a widow in her 70s with no friends to speak of, a handful of relatives who are elderly or hundreds of miles away, lonely, vulnerable, strength and health fading, sand in the hourglass running out, leaving no legacy, no history, just a debris field, which will be blown away and forgotten within one generation. Alice, just like the former Soviet Union and communism. That's what they leave, a debris field, a bunch of what ifs and what happened. You have to understand your mother is using communist tactics on you. This is where it comes from with with her. It comes from where she was raised, and she liked it. There was something about that she liked, and I've seen this so many times with ex-Soviet bloc mothers, especially Russian mothers, but ex-Soviet bloc, Polish mothers, Yugoslavian mothers. I'm telling you, I have them from every Soviet bloc, ex-Soviet country on here, and it's the same story over and over and over again. These women are mini Stalins. They're mini Stalins. And then they go out and then they confuse you, and then they will berate you and then use the same issue, berate you and use the same issue against you at the same time. And it doesn't have to make sense. None of it. Understand something. Your mother wants to be taken care of. She wants to be taken care of by you. And by being taken care of, that means you're going to sit there, take her abuse, take her bullshit, buy her things, have her rip apart everything you buy her. That's what she expects. Because that's where she's from. That was the good life. Mother Russia. I guarantee you she still talks about the old days of Russia. I guarantee it. Guarantee it. Without a doubt. There was something about the way she was raised that it continues to this day. Personally, Alice, I don't know why you kept putting up with this horrible, horrible woman. Especially living in the United States, having a husband. I mean, the guilt bond has to be strong. But you have to understand, you owe this woman nothing. It's all propaganda that you have bought. You have bought the narcissist communist propaganda. It's like Narcissistic Pravda is who your mother is. It's all bullshit. It's all self-serving, it's all bullshit, and it's all meant to serve her. The only thing you can do is to walk away and let her destroy herself. Let the ideology and let her destroy herself. She made her bed, let her die in it. So, thank you so much for your contribution. Thank you for your story. I hope this helps. Thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any opinions or advice in the comments section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, you have a topic you'd like me to cover, a narcissist you'd like to expose, you'd like to set up Skype, a phone call, have a private video made, or a Facebook live chat, or you'd like to sponsor a video for someone who needs help and can't afford it, or you just like to sponsor the channel in general, help pay the bills, keep the lights on and everything running, and keep the channel growing, you know what to do with the PayPal and email links in the description box. And remember, this channel is still survives and is funded 100% by contributions from all of you. If you're unclear how to donate, wait for the instructional video link to pop up on the screen at the end of this video to walk you through all of that. Please like and share this video wherever you can. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and be sure to click the subscription bell to be notified of all my video uploads. I'm Ollie Matthews. This has been the Narcissistic Resistance. Take care.